Welcome to the Wholography, aka the whole writing. Finish what was originally intended. Actualize your fullest potential. This is the word, the logos, in all places, in all spaces, at all time, beyond time. Welcome to the Wholography podcast, hosted by Alex Will 64. Okay, here I am again, Alex Will 64, host of this Wholography podcast. Now on episode 7, True Education. Because aren't you here to learn? Aren't you here to gather knowledge and get some wisdom, have an understanding, and hopefully apply it? That's lacking in that department, the application department. I remember I was on social media and I joked about, and it was probably serious. I was probably being serious when I joked about it, but I was going to start a organization known as the Applied Sciences Division, where, everybody wants to, teach and give out knowledge and think they know everything and whatnot. Okay, that's cool. After you're done with their schools, come on over to my center institute where we implement what you learned and see if it's worth, what's the results of what you had learned at those previous schools where all they did was just give you information. Yeah, Applied Sciences Division. You know what I'm saying? You know how corporations or companies will have like a research and development team or a company or department, and then they have the Applied Sciences Division. You like that, don't you? Don't be trying to steal it, because you know what I'm saying? You smell like you steal, so don't do that. But anyway, how y'all doing, man? This is Alex Will 64 again, and like I said, True Education. Now, before I begin, I just want to let y'all know that I did post 2.5 hour, almost at that time, 2.5 hour video on my YouTube channel, Ether Realist. If you want to check that out, go ahead. It's called Alex Will 64, Donald Glover and Kendrick Lamar, European Atlanta and the Depthical Steppers. It's a long title. I wanted it to be just as I read it out to you. It's right there on my YouTube channel. I posted it a couple days ago, so check that out. At the time of this recording of this episode, yeah. So go check that out. I mean, if you want to see my face, I don't know if you're a newcomer to the whole Alex Will 64, setup, or what you want to call it, body of work, but if you never see my face or whatever, there you go. You get to see my face, my shiny bald head, you know what I'm saying? Cape Baldy. I got that name from One Punch Man, the anime. Cape Baldy, you know what I'm saying? I'm on there reviewing Donald Glover's show, Atlanta, because they just put out a season 3 this year. It premiered in March of this year, 2022. But I'm also reviewing at the same time Kendrick Lamar's new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. So I'm doing a review of both of those projects as one in one video. So I'm flip-flopping between those because I've seen some parallels and some connections. And, I was watching this show while listening, at the same time as listening to Kendrick Lamar's new album. So check it out, man. It's me, being me on there. You get to see my face, you know what I'm saying? Instead of just listening to the mellifluence of the voice from the podcast. So check that out. Now, I don't know how long it's going to stay up there, so you want to check that out right away, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, I don't just review it just to review it. Like I said, it's tied back to the stuff that I talk about on my podcast and stuff I've been talking about while I was on social media with the Instagram and the Facebook stuff. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So the questions to address here on this episode, True Education. So number 1, first question, how can the etymology of the word education help us understand exactly what it is? Gonna go depthical into that today. Number 2, question 2. How is the true education related to what happens to us throughout our lives? Question 3. What is the real meaning of expertise, and why should science of experience be taught in school? Because you don't see that. Do you see any college course, or if you was in college, community college, you know what I'm saying, you was getting your doctor, your master, whatever. Did you see a class for experience? Like that's what y'all study is experience? Like that's what the topic of the entire syllabus of that course. We're going to get into that in this episode, man. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to this podcast and definitely check me out on YouTube. So let's get started. Now, first question, how can the etymology of the word education help us understand exactly what it is? And this is what we're going to be doing with a lot of keywords that, we're dealing with when it comes to holography. We need to really get into what was the reason the word is here in the first place. What was the intention behind forming the word? What was its original meaning, and how over time did it come to mean something, different, or even something that's similar? Like, how did its meaning, how did it started to add on meaning or lose the original meaning that it had? You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. Because I know that, me loving words and studying etymology and definitions and everything like that, looking up synonyms on the internet or whatever, I like to do that. Don't judge me, my man. Sometimes there is a definition entry for a word, and it starts with archaic, and then it gives you this meaning of the word that is, when you say archaic, you're talking about something ancient or something that's very old or it's now obsolete. But it's interesting to know that archaic definition of that word because it tells you exactly why the word came into being. This was the original word, but then over time it started to take on these extra or new meanings. That's very interesting to me. And I'm trying to pass that interest on to you. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're trying to get into this holography thing and really let it help you. So, well, let's first address the common beliefs about education. Because everybody, most people value education. They want you to go to school. We're obligated as children to be, ushered away into elementary school and be among kids we never seen before. Compulsory schooling, like they have a whole curriculum laid out for you on what you're supposed to learn. You go through grade school, middle school, or intermediate, junior high, you go into high school, and a lot of us are encouraged nowadays to go to college and take on some debt for that if you ain't getting a full ride or some scholarships. You know what I'm saying? And then just in society itself, if someone is not educated, we don't even generally look to them for any type of expertise on anything. Because it's like, hey, you don't have a degree, so why should we be listening to you about anything? But that's not true all across the board because, again, we know that experience is something where it's like it's also being valued over what you learn at a university. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would I listen to somebody's expertise on outer space? You know what I'm saying? If outer space is your thing, where I can just sit here and interview a guy who was outer space. Like he has firsthand experience on something rather than what was learned in some textbooks at a college, some expensive textbooks at that. So just what I'm saying, because like I said, education is definitely this is how people climb the social ladder. If you haven't noticed, you're considered socially higher than someone if you have a degree, or you have degrees that are higher than bachelor's or whatever. That's determining your social economic status on paper, on the surface. But as you can see, middle class is starting to fade away. You know what I'm saying? It's starting to go away, and now it's coming down to haves and have-nots. So be on the lookout for that dynamic going on. But yeah, that's generally that's what I learned about degrees and stuff like that. It determines your social economic position or status or rank in society. So those who have the doctorates or any type of high prestigious degree of that nature, then you would be ranked above everybody else in society. Everybody should be listening to you because you have a doctorate, or if you have a master's degree, you know what I'm saying? Or if you just have a bachelor's degree. Anybody with a lower degree than that, or not even having one at all, they beneath you on paper because of that paper that you hold with so high esteem with that paper. You know what I'm saying? You probably got it in a glass case if you do have a degree. Got it in a glass case frame, and it's got some real fancy framing around it, and you got it up on your wall somewhere, or sitting on the entertainment center, or on a shelf somewhere in your house or whatever. It's prestigious, very prestigious. You know what I'm saying? But let's get into what education actually is by looking at the etymology. Education, state of educating, educate, educare. It's a Latin word. Educare. Educare. That was my Latin accent. Educare. What are we saying here? We have to split the prefix e from the root word ducare or ducare. So e in any of these Latin words is, if it's preceding a root word, is usually meaning out, like the process of something coming out or going out, as opposed to going in, because it would have in, or that type of prefix. But we're dealing with e, which is shortened from ex. You know what I'm saying? Because ex, we know exit or excommunicate or expel. You know what I'm saying? This is all dealing with something going out. So there's this meaning of out in education or educare. Then we have ducare, which means duct, something being drawn out, something being flowing, drawing, spilling, splashing out. Riveting, or like it's almost like a river, like a duct, like an aqueduct. You know what I'm saying? It's something flowing out or drawing out. So if we put e ducare together, we have draw out, drawing out. Educare means to draw out. So we get the word educate from a Latin meaning of draw out. So I would assume, or we're going to stick with that meaning of, if we're educating someone using the English word educate, or he is educating or she is educating themselves, there is a process of something being drawn out. Something is being drawn out. Now this connects to learning. So what could we're connecting education to learning, and education is a state of educating, or some sort of educating going on. So if this stuff is being connected to learning and knowledge and wisdom and understanding and these things, so I would conclude that education or educating is all about drawing out knowledge, information, understanding, wisdom, insight, enlightenment, comprehend. We're drawing it out of the person. We're drawing it out. We're doing things to bring what's in that person, because it's something coming out with education or educare. We're drawing it out, and I would say to the surface, as opposed to we're putting something in someone. That's two different ways you can look at learning. Are we drawing something out inside of them to the surface, or are we penetrating that surface to put something into them? How would you describe your educational experience thus far? As far as you haven't been to grade school, junior high, high school, and possibly you've gone into a university, a community college, a vocational school like a VOTEC school or something like that, institute, an academy. How would you describe your experience with that? Because for me, when dealing with those institutions, for me, it was definitely a putting something in, like an inculcation, to use a word that would definitely sum that up, where they're putting something into you as opposed to drawing something out. The focus is, this is the curriculum, this is what we want you to know, and this is what we're going to inject and instill and program and condition into you throughout these years of you being in this institution, or those that you are going to graduate to. Now, am I saying that, is there something inherently wrong with that? Well, It depends on how much you value the opposite, which is we're going to draw what's out of you to the surface. There's something in Latin, the phrase a priori. A, then there's a space, and then priori. A priori. And it's usually connected to the word knowledge. A priori knowledge. What is a priori knowledge? It's knowledge or information or wisdom understanding that you have that came prior to you being taught anything or something being put into you, which in this case it would be at a school, or you being around family members or friends or people in your neighborhood, people in your village, people around you trying to put something inside of you. What is your what is that source or wellspring of a priori knowledge in you? Is that worthwhile rather than trying to instill something into someone? What about that deep well of a priori knowledge in you? Have you ever tapped into that? Have you ever considered what's already in you that just needs to be drawn out? Can you draw it out? Do you know how to draw it out? Because then you would ask, well, where is this well within me? Is it in my mind? Is it in my body somewhere? I mean, this is a thought, but your whole genome. What about your genetics? Isn't that a source or well of information? Is it within your genome, which is your set of genes and genetics within you? Wouldn't your genome? We know that your genome contains your entire blueprint, or book, quote unquote book of everything about you. And for the sake of mainstream genetics, is mostly dealing with your phenotype or your physical traits, like how tall you are, how light or dark your skin is, if you're growing hair, if you're not, is your earlobes like really connected to your face, or do they hang a little bit, like these type of things. Are you gonna have blue eyes, brown eyes, hazel green eyes? Girls be loving hazel green eyes on dudes. You know what I'm saying? This is all, you're gonna have quote unquote good hair, quote unquote straight. You know what I'm saying? This would all be in your genome. But what else is in your genome? What else is in this big bank of genetic information inside of you? And can it be all drawn out? And again, this is opposed to how they do you in, these institutionalized schools, where it's all about programming you with what's in the curriculum. Who approved that curriculum? Was it the teacher? Was it the principal of that school? Was it the superintendent? Is it the state, federal government? Is it some international think tank or something along those lines that dictate what your child, or what you, and when you was young, you were supposed to be inculcated with? Because I didn't see it, and I'm looking back at, or trying to remember my time in those schools. Like, I don't remember there being a lot, or if any type of program to draw out my pre-existing a priori information or knowledge or talents. Because it's not just information. It would be your natural born talent. You was born with it. There's even, some belief systems, like, maybe some of the Buddhist or the Hindu stuff, where, they'd even say you had some of this stuff from a past life. But do you see any programs out there to draw any of that outward? You see, when it comes to holography, sweet brother, sweet sister, my good brother, my sweet sister, when it comes to holography, it's all dealing with education, in the sense that something is to be drawn out. That's a part of that conceptualization of holography. We are about drawing out what is already there within you, by connecting dots, by correlating different formulas and functions that we find in different fields of study, fields of knowledge, and helping to integrate things together, and helping that, or using that to help us to draw things out. That's what makes the holographer the education, like focused on that archaic meaning, or that original meaning of education. We specialize in drawing that out. especially if you go back to earlier episodes where I'm talking about ontology and then teleology, or ontoteleology, or entelechy, where we're drawing the purpose and goal is to draw out what's in you to the fullest extent. So if you have, for example, hidden potential, where when it comes to entelechy or self actualization, it's all about drawing all that out and realizing it all to the fullest out potential. So when you educate a acorn, you should be able to observe and view all of its inner content that leads it to become a tree. You educate a caterpillar, draw all of its inner workings, all its inner knowledge, its inner potential to become that butterfly. This is what the holographer is focused on. So I have a whole quote for you to snack on and chew. You know what I'm saying? Put it in your smoothie, or sprinkle it on your salad or whatever. You are where you are to draw out what you are. This is true education. Repeat. You are where you are to draw out what you are. This is true education. So let's unpack that with this second question for the episode. How is the true education that we just was dealing with here about drawing things out related to what happens to us throughout our lives? This is where the application comes in. Because if we're dealing with a priori, meaning something that you had before anybody was able to instill or engineer or condition you into, what was already there? Now, are we just limited to information? I mean, what information was in you, though? What's inside of you? What's within you? The person who's materialist in his understanding will just say, well, bones, blood, meat. People be talking about meat bags. They limit their understanding of what's inside of them to them just being a meat stick or a meat bag. Blood, marrow in your bones, your cells, proteins, red blood cells. You got a whole gut flora or gut microbiota, in your stomach area. You got nerves and stuff like that, capillaries. I'm just kind of going back to anatomy class back in college and high school. You got hormones. Women have their set, men have their set. This is all what's within you physically, but we're going a little bit more depthical to what's going on with you physically, aren't we? What are you holding on to? What's inside of you? Because you have to understand that and come to terms with that. Because when it comes to life, it's all going to be drawn out. Or maybe let me take that back, because perhaps in this lifetime, maybe not all of it will. Because this goes back to the episode. What was the episode where I was talking about how teleology, where people meet their physical death before they even got any type of progress in drawing out their purpose or reaching their purpose. So their finality for them is just them experiencing a physical death, instead of getting or moving towards the finality of being completely educated, or being completely what's the word I'm looking for? Completely realized or completely actualized. So let me be more precise in my wording here, or my vernacular. Yes, you're going to be drawn out throughout life. That's the true education. What's inside of you is being drawn out every moment of your life. It goes back to this thing I wanted you to chew on. You are where you are to draw out what you are. So where are you in life? And I'm not just talking about physically, even though that plays a part in it. I'm talking physically, and I'm also talking about where you are emotionally, where you at as far as your development is concerned, where you at as far as your understanding of reality and existence. Where are you? You are where you are supposed to be right now. A lot of people don't think they're supposed to be where they are. It's like, I beg to differ. I gotta disagree with you there, pal. You are where you are because you're being drawn out. So whatever you're experiencing, whatever circumstances you got going on right now is there for a reason. We already know if we're talking about if we're dealing with the seven principles of the universe, going back to the Kabbalion book, you know what I'm saying? We're dealing with cause and effect. There's no such thing as randomness or chance or mistakes or coincidences. It's all purposeful. So why do you think that where you at right now ain't meant for you? Yes, it is. And I'm going to tell you exactly what it's based on. Everything inside of you right now. Now, what I was mentioning, and one of the reasons why I did that recent video or review of the show Atlanta and Kendrick Lamar's album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, because I was tying it back to, especially tying it back to, my whole emotional baggage claim and inner work suite course that I have at ether-ins.teachable.com. Which has been out since 2018, and the whole thing of that course, the emotional baggage claim being the free mini course that leads into the inner work suite, which you got, so you got to come out your pockets for that one, pal. That all deals with dealing with your inner emotional content, which does include your emotional baggage. That's a very key buzzword in these times. Emotional baggage. We're dealing with our baggage. What are you holding on to? Because you have to understand, you take your baggage wherever you go. That's the type of baggage that you can't leave anywhere. Yeah, you can sit here and project it onto other people and to outer events all day, but you have to understand that one, it's coming with you everywhere you go, so you can't outrun it. And number two, what you are holding on to, what baggage you have, is determining what you are experiencing right now, yesterday, tomorrow. Your inner content is the great determiner of the events of your life. Think about everything that happened to you today, something that happened to you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what's going to happen to you in a couple hours or tomorrow or 10 years or 20 years down the line. It's all based and determined by your inner content. You don't want to believe it? We're going to get into it and we're going to break down the science of it when we come back from break. Let me take a break here and we'll be right back. Gracious greetings, y'all. This is Alex Will 64 of the Wholography podcast, and I'm here to let you know about Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about it yet, it's the easiest and simplest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Now, let me break it down to you. Let me tell you about it. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one single place. And best of all, my friend, Anchor is totally free. So I would want you to go out to the internet. I don't know if you can go out to it, but go into the internet and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, I'm back. Episode 7, True Education. Or how people like to stylize the word, they be like education, like get your education. You know what I'm saying? Some ebonic slang for your education. But all in all, man, getting back to what people don't want to accept about the things that happen to them. They are not going to generally accept that it's because of them that it is happening to them. First and foremost, because it is you going through the experience. But now with the whole true education thing, we're trying to determine why are you going through this experience? Why are things in this, why is this circumstance in this structure for you at this time, before, and going into the future? Why? Because going back to my emotional baggage claim and inner work suite, that course, right? The whole aim of that initially is to, getting people to recognize, recollect, remember, bring into awareness something that has happened to them before, and then whatever type of schema or schematic that their behavior adheres to, or their thinking patterns, their perspectives adhere to based on that experience. You know what I'm saying? Or based on what happened. But it's important to highlight that this is a priori knowledge. This is a priori content. It's just like the acorn that just fell out of the oak tree. Whatever tree that it's going to be is already etched and sketched into that acorn. And I dare go forward to say everything that's going to happen to that tree or that seed or that acorn is etched into that acorn as well. So that its a priori content is determining what's going to happen to it going forward. But some people don't want to go that far when I take it there. Because there are people right now, it could be you listening to this, you know what I'm saying, that, you're looking at the events that happened to you over the course of your life as someone else's fault. Or it had nothing to do with you. Like it was all, you can place all the blame on these external people, this external environment, these external factors, these external circumstances, external conditions. But we holographers, are we not? Or at least you're learning to be one. You're going to keep listening to this podcast, or at least you want to know, more about it. That's not going to be the holographer's approach to that. We're not going to sit here and blame anything or anybody outside of us for what we are, what we do, and who we have become today. No, we're not going to take that route. That's the route of people who would continue to allow people to inculcate them and condition them and program them the way that the curricula as it was established for them. Ain't no freedom in that. Ain't no liberty in that understanding. It's a victim mentality, and I want you to be a victor. Don't I sound like a victor to you? Do I sound like a victim? Tell me. Leave me a message. Email me. Let me know if I sound like a victim in any way so I can make sure I adjust it to sound like a victor. And a victor takes responsibility and accountability for what happens to him or her. You know what I mean? No, we're not adopting no victim mentality over here. And we're going to the highest echelons of that understanding, where everything that happened to you and is happening to you is based on what's going on in you, what you are holding on to. So that could be a schema, and for those of you that don't know it, schema is a it's a construction or configuration of your mindset, which leads into the reasons you behave a certain way, or you think a certain way, or you perceive reality a certain way, or your personality is a certain way. And usually these schemas are based on, again, your a priori content first and foremost, and then whatever initial experiences you had in the earliest parts of your life, which would go back to your childhood. And this does include, as a subcategory, your traumas. So whatever especially those traumatic experiences that you had as a child or as an adolescent, these are the determining factors, or part of the determination of the way you act, the way you think, the way you behave in certain situations, your perspective on things, your belief system, why you are attracted to this type of religion instead of that one, or this philosophy instead of this one. It's all in your schemas that you're holding on to. Some people call it pain body. This was something that I marked, or at least pointed out when I reviewed Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, because he had a new age spiritualist on there named Eckhart Tolle. You probably heard of him. He's like a self-help author who wrote a lot of books on ego and ego death and spirituality and all that. And he was a guest appearance on Kendrick Lamar's new album. So he's on a few songs talking about, his understandings about the mind and emotions and baggage and stuff like that. And one of the things that he did say on one of Kendrick's songs is that people will have these pain bodies, which are schemas ultimately, that feed on people's unhappiness. They feed on their quote unquote negative emotions, and that's how they sustain their own life. It's almost like a parasite inside of you that feeds off of all your negative feelings about things, and it feeds on you. So how do you think it's going to continue to feed if we're talking about pain body? How is it going to continue to feed? Well, it's going to prompt you or urge you into experiences that are going to lead to your unhappiness so that it can feed off of that feeling. That's how it feeds. It has to get you, it has to urge you to do things that culminate or result in you being unhappy, so that particular pain body can feed on that. So if you're looking at it the way that I'm trying to get you to look at it, it's not even people outside of you controlling you. It's really the schemas and that baggage and that a priori content that's really in control. And its controlling aspect comes from the fact that you are ignorant of your own inner content. You are not applying know thyself in the right way. You know what I'm saying? You haven't been shown yet, I guess, if you're not doing that. Because know thyself is usually along the lines of, trying to learn about, spiritual, like these concepts that don't really deal with you personally. It deals with you in mass, but not you personally. Like what's going on with you personally, like your emotional baggage. And that emotional baggage or what's in there is usually that's what's hindering you in your progress or in your development. It's the reason why you have immature adults that could be reaching 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old and still immature in that way. They have not addressed their a priori content. That big bag of traumas or, outworn belief systems. You're worn out, You're holding on to the philosophies or the religions or the ways of doing things from your parents or from, your family in general or just where you grew up at. But we could take it further to say, well, what determines where you're going to be born and who you're going to be born to? Have you heard the question, one of the big questions of why did I choose these two people to be my parents? Have you heard that before? Because the average person isn't going to accept the fact if you tell them something along the lines of you chose them two parents for a reason that you need to find out. Because if you tell them that, they're going to be in denial and say something like, no, look what my dad did or he didn't do, and look what my mom did and what she didn't do. They'll be on that immature understanding of life. Not over here in Wholography. We're not going to be dealing with that here in Wholography. We're here to be victors, not victims. It's a big difference. Big difference. Because it's the victim that doesn't understand why they're still being victimized. If you are a victim events will happen to you. That's how it rocks. You're basic. You can see yourself as, if we just put it in terms of yin and yang or yang and yin, for those of you that understand Tao or Tao or whatever. What you put out is yang. What's coming back at you is yin. Yin is magnetic. Yang is electric. Everything that is external to you, it can be considered of a yin type, because it's there to help draw out what's inside of you. That's education. Remember when I said you're being educated from the time you get out the womb to now? You've been educated this whole time. Every event that has happened to you and will happen to you is there to draw out what's in you. It's a draw out process. Right now, whatever's happening, whatever circumstances you're in, it's you giving a reaction to it, right? You have a reaction to everything that's happening to you. Whether you do something about it, or say something about it, or think some way about it, or feel some way about it, it got a reaction out of you. Now, look at the situation and determine right now what is being drawn out of you right now. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it joy? Is it content? Satisfaction? Resentment? Feeling like you're unlucky or a misfortune, or unfortunate? Or victim? You feeling like a victim right now? Well, that's the reason why the event is happening to you right now. That's exactly why. To draw out what you already been holding on to. So that victimness, you've already been holding on to it. That happiness, you've already got it inside of you. The event draws it out. And the event itself is shaped in a way to draw that particular feeling out of you, or that particular thought, or that particular behavior out of you. Because we all don't behave the same way when something happens. Now, we may generally behave the same way. Like, for example, if somebody got into a car accident right in front of us on the highway, yeah, there's going to be a feeling of surprise. Even devastation, because it could have been something you saw. But again, outside of what happened to them two, the fact that, or the people involved in the accident, the fact that you're there to observe it and there was a reaction out of you, says something about what's going on within you. So start seeing your events as byproducts of your a priori content, your inner dwelling content. That's how I'm able to better read what's happening to me and can tell why it's happening. And the more that I get into that mentality and understanding, I can sit here and right now understand why something would happen to me in the next minute. As opposed to someone who's lost in life and don't even know why things are happening to them the way that they are. You got to start accepting responsibility for what's happening to you. That's maturity. That's spiritual maturity. That's what that is. And the fact that once you start looking into these things a bit more depthly, you start to see the cycles of these things happening to you. That's why I have a whole science known as psychology, and I'm going to, challenge psychology with it. You just wait and see. Psychology. You got people that, they swear they understand psychology, but don't even understand or know about the cycles of their own life. They don't understand that they do the same thing every 2 years or every month or every 4 days. They don't know their own cycles. So what do you mean you know psychology? Yeah, you know psychology and you don't know your own cycle. So there's you're incomplete in your understanding of yourself or of the mind of, a person's mind. Your habits are on a cycle. You habitually do things. It's cyclic. You don't know your own cycles, then you have no knowledge of self. Real talk. So we dealing with cycles that are, daily or routinely, like something that you do every day or every 2 days or every week. And then we dealing with greater cycles where something you do every few years or something that happens to you every decade or something that happens to you in each lifetime or every few lifetimes if you are into the whole thing of having experienced multiple lifetimes before this one. It starts small and it has a greater, these are your cycles. If you have knowledge of self, I am going to assume you know your cycles. If you don't know your cycles or you're not moving towards trying to know them, I have to put you in a pile with other people who are ignorant of what they are and how they are and what they are and what's going on inside of them. Because these cycles deal with time. So what if time is just here to accommodate or to support your education? It's only here to deal with your own cycles. It accommodates your cycles because of what you're holding on to within your being. So the arrangement of life's events, time is a cycle. We're not even looking at time linearly anymore. Modern mainstream science can tell you that. We're dealing with cycles now. So this is the reason why I'm dealing with psychology, the study of your own cycles. This is what's arranging all the events in your life. And you would think that something that never happened to you before is something that, never happened to you earlier than that. But I would dare say you're just dealing with a level of intensity of the same type of event. Because again, let's say if you're holding on to extreme misery, right? You're one of the people that has misery. It may not be something that's always in the surface of your mind or in the surface dealing with every day, but it's still something it's in the background, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying? So to speak. Like, people who deal with the whole Carl Jung understanding, they'll say it's in your subconscious. But there are events that happen in cycles to bring that out for you to experience or for you to feel, for you to see. And if you're adept at it, for you to deal with and overcome it. So you look at the dynamics of the event and how it may be different from another event, but understand you felt the same way about each event. So that means that it must be the same type of these different events, but they're bringing out the same misery in you. See, this is the science of what we're dealing with. This is the science of experience. This is what this is. Oh, yeah. This is how I come to know myself more than I ever have. I understand the arrangement of my entire life. Based on cycles, based on what I know I'm harboring within myself. The joys, the ups and downs, the you know what I'm saying, any type of other emotional thing I got going on with me. Because it's determining the cycles of the external events. Whether it's because a lot of times your external events involve other people, but it doesn't always have to be another person. It could be anything that could happen to you. But again, it's all there to draw out something inside of you. So where's the responsibility and accountability for what happens to us or to you? I don't care how devastating what happened to you it was. I'm telling you it happened because you were already harboring what it was going to draw out of you. It's a hard, big tablet to swallow for a lot of people because they're still blaming that person, them, this environment, that workplace, those people. No, you. You. Can you imagine me pointing my finger at you? Or just like my hand, like, like a chopping motion, but I'm pointing my whole hand at you. You. But how many people are going to go down that path of knowledge of self or know thyself? Who's going to do that? Who's going to take responsibility and accountability for that? Question 3. What were we dealing with? What is the real meaning of expertise and why should science of experience be taught in school? Well, I could tell you right now, it's like, don't you think people can benefit from understanding the way their life works? I mean, we can study marine biology. We can study metallurgy or chemistry, understand the bonds, valence, electrons. You want to study that? Get your little study buddy. You know what I'm saying? Did some cliff notes on the great American novels of the last couple centuries. You want to study that? Computer science is a big one. You know what I'm saying? I would definitely encourage you to learn how to code. We do live in a computer technological society. But nobody's sitting here dealing with the science of experience itself, which all these things are subservient to. And when I say things are being drawn out of you, I don't want you just to think that we're just talking about the detrimental emotions. No, you have happiness in you, don't you? You have a sense of fortune in you, right? Like a sense of grace and harmony, because there are events that are going to happen to draw those out too. You can see it as a circular symphony. You know what I'm saying? How can I put this? It's like a circular orchestra. Your life. Different notes being hit on to bring out certain sounds that happen in these different leaf motifs and different hooks, and it's just like a song. You know how in a song there's repetitive choruses and bridges and the way that you rap and your verses. It's just like that, but it's your life. So you have emotions in you and schemas in you that are drawn out of you in a repetitive manner, in a cyclical manner. Some are more frequent, and some are not as frequent. Like you get one little flash of happiness, but you holding on to all this dark emotional content. But it happens in cycles. So yes, I would think that anybody and everybody would benefit from a course in college or some sort of institute where they learn about experiences and the science of the experiences as they happen. Because that what makes you an expert. When someone says you're an expert about something, you have experience with that topic or subject. But expertise in and of itself is someone who deals with experience. So the true primary expert is someone who has knowledge and science on experience itself, no matter what type of experience it is. That's what I'm aiming to be, the primary or the quintessential expert. Someone who has knowledge and science of the external events and any type of other happenings that happen to people, the events of their lives. Marinate the tongue with some water. Hold on. See, I don't know if you ever heard of the Kolb cycle of experiential learning, or Kolb cycle of learning. Kolb, Kolb. Have you ever heard of that? Never heard of the Kolb cycle of experiential, or Kolb's cycle of learning? Because I got it pulled up right now. It's 4 parts, and it's like a cycle that happens between these 4 different features of learning. And it was developed by a guy named David A. Kolb. And he came out with it in the 80s, like the early 80s, like I think 1984, sometime around there. And I know he derived it from somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where he got it from, but it's attributed to this David Kolb guy. So I'm looking at 2 different ones here. There's the Kolb cycle of experiential learning, where you deal with concrete experience, which leads into reflective observation, which then goes into abstract conceptualization, and then it goes into active experimentation. Very important cycle. So with concrete experience means doing or having an experience. Then it goes into reflective observation, which is reviewing or reflecting on that experience. Then it goes into abstract conceptualization, which is when you're concluding or learning from the experience, and then going into active experimentation, where you're planning or trying what was learned. And then that goes back to repeat the cycle of going into concrete experience, doing or having experience. And you go through that cycle on and on and on and on, and you're learning. As opposed to you just sitting there in a classroom and them telling you what they want you to know, or listening to someone's YouTube channel and not applying anything that's being told in there. Or just reading a lot of books and just being a walking encyclopedia, which we need those. But again, there's no application there. See, this cycle of this experiential learning, that's where you're doing something and learning as you're doing it. That's why I was always stressing when I was dealing with discipline, is the whole thing of actual practical application, praxis. At least in these institutions, you'll have theory. It deals with the three-step plan of theory. No. Philosophy, theory, practice. PTP. Philosophy, theory, and then you practice everything you just learned. That's how it sticks. That's how you really start to realize and actualize yourself, through that process of actual practical application. That's why I'm like, I'm about to start the applied sciences division out here. You know what I mean? You want to sign up? Wish it was the last four digits of your social, and I need emergency contact, in case something happen. And we also going to need the last 10 or the last places you lived in the last 10 years. You know how applications do. You know what I'm saying? They're always asking penetrating and nosy questions and stuff like that. But yeah, man, that's what we're talking about here. Experiential learning. You want to talk about event planning? What about event anticipation based on your knowledge of your psychology and the content that you're holding on to? And making sure I lay it out right here that the holographer, he or she into a holography with the W, is the quintessential expert. That's what you're aiming to be in this. Be the quintessential expert, where you have the science and knowledge and understanding and wisdom of experience itself. You know why it happens to people, or things happen to people. You know what they can do to stop something from happening to them. You know what I'm saying? You understand the knowledge of schemas and pain bodies and traumatic baggage and stuff of that nature, and how that's shaping or it's dictating what's happening to a person. Yes, this should definitely be in a university somewhere globally. This is the science of experience. They don't teach that. But you hear me teaching it right here on this podcast now, don't you? And this is where we shall bring this to a close, and give you the end question, which is: be honest. Are you fully prepared to take full responsibility of your life and everything that has happened in it? And you need to be honest about yourself. You need to know where you are, because let's bring back that thing I need you to chew on. You need to chew on it. And what was it? You are where you are to draw out what you are. So don't be sitting around looking like, I don't know why things are happening to me, and I don't know why this is going on, and this is happening. What is the meaning? It's because of what you are harboring inside of you. Don't give me no excuses over here. Don't play that immature game with me. You are where you are right damn now to draw out what you are right now. You are right where you need to be. You don't like it? Make that change. It sounds simple, but how many people really apply this? It sounds fly to say to people, but again, who's going to do it? Who's going to get this science and use it? Who's going to do it? You ever heard somebody just sitting here complaining about everything? Just complaining about their life, and it's everybody else's fault, and they never got over something that happened in their childhood. They'll probably fight you if you told them what I told you today. They'll probably try to fight you. That's how immature they are in terms of their own understanding of themselves. They don't even know that what's going on within them is directing and constructing everything outside of them. This is the law of correspondence. This is the law of cause and effect. This is the law of mentalism. As within, so without. But that's my time for this episode today. Again, Alex Will 64, the Wholography Podcast, episode 7, True Education. Check me out on YouTube, the Ether Realist. I'll try to put the link in this episode description. And think about what I said. You are where you are to draw out, reveal what you are. And that's my time.